something we talked about yesterday with trig, that a trig equation has three parts. So we had this yesterday. So a trig equation, this was a trig equation, and it always contained the function, the angle, so sine of 30 degrees, and then this part is called the trig value. Here it's a decimal, but we also have worked with fractions as well. So it could be a decimal or a fraction over there. Okay, so use your calculator to find. So the cos of 30 equals what? So I'm looking for its trig value. So that's going to be you grabbing your calculator. What's the first thing you do before you type? I'm not even going to type. I'm going to do something first. Check that it's in degrees, so I'm good. Now I'm going to push the cos of 30 equals 0.866. So now, let's pretend that we don't know that anymore. This time, I'm going to get that off my screen. This time, the cos of the angle equals 0.866. How will I figure out what the angle is? So you know the answer is 30 degrees from before, but how can you get that? Okay, so here's the method. So if I'm trying to figure out the angle, how would I get the angle alone? What do I need to get rid of to make the angle alone? What's beside it? Cos. So really, I need to get rid of cos. So how am I going to get rid of cos? I'm going to do the cos inverse. Okay, it's just kind of like in math when we do a square and then we do a square root to get rid of it, right? That's the opposite. So cos inverse and cos would cancel each other. That's the opposite process. But like candy to children, if you do something to one, what do you have to do? To the other. So we also have to do it to that side. Okay, so what does that look like? Everybody should probably see over top of their cos button a cos with a little -1. So to activate that on mine, I have to push the second function button first. Can everybody activate that, the little cos inverse? Everybody's good with that? Second, everybody not wave me down if you can't find these buttons. 0.866, that's the trig value. And we should get 30-degree angle. Okay. So let's make a rule. To get angles, we're always going to inverse button. Always. So always when you need an angle, you're going to be doing some kind of inversing. Okay, and then that carries on. In grade 11 when you learn trig, that's the same idea that you'll do. Okay, so number 1, here's how it works. Yesterday, give me on this triangle, put an H somewhere. Across from 90, H. If this is the angle that I'm dealing with, where's the O and where's the A? Opposite, adjacent. Out of those 3 letters, which one is irrelevant to this problem? The O, leaving me with an A and an H. So which method would that be? Cos, the ka. Okay, so I'm going to be using the ka, so that's the cos. So the cos of this angle will equal the fraction of A over H, 10 over 14. So again, how do I get the angle? I need to get rid of this. So I'm going to cos inverse. So I'm going to cos inverse. So this is what I'm going to be typing in my calculator. Okay, now do you see that I'm using brackets? That's important because you're trying to cos inverse that fraction. Okay, so I need you to insert a bracket around the 10 over 14, the fraction. Okay, everyone's good with how to type that? And you should get 44.4 degrees. I'm going to do 1 for angles. Yeah. If I did a side, I would go to 2. For angles, we'll go to 1. Does that seem reasonable as an answer? That's always another thing in math. Always, does it seem reasonable? Okay, number 2. Give me A, O, and H. Give me your letters on it. Okay, there's my 3 letters. Did we put them in the same places? Which one do I omit? I'm not going to use the A at all. So that leaves me with an O and an H. So does that match so, or the ka, or the toa? So I'm going to work with sine. So the sine of the angle equals the trig value. So always be setting it up. Trig function, angle equals trig value. So I'm needing to get the angle alone, get rid of sine, so I'm going to be pushing sine inverse to get it out. And again, I'm going to put it in brackets, like so. Okay, next one. H, O, A. Labels. Don't care about the H, right? Leaving me with an O and an A. So that would match my TOA method. So I'm going to work with tan function. So the tan of the angle equals what trig value? So O over A means a 6 over 7. So to get the angle alone, get the tan out, you're going to go with a tan inverse. Do we understand why the brackets are important? If you didn't put brackets around it, your calculator would do this tan inverse of 6, and then it would take that and divide it by 7. So we don't want that. Okay, the last one I'm going to leave for you to try on your own. I'm going to work it through as well, but try it all by yourself. $66.4 degrees as an answer. Match. Got a 1 head shake. Another one, okay. All right, the next question. Here we go. There's an H here, O at the bottom, A on the side. And I'm going to scratch off the O. So that leaves me with the ka match. So I'm working with cosine. So the cos of this angle equals A over H cos inverse that fraction. Okay, are we panicking because it's doing something? Is that what your calculator's doing? Yeah, so why did this not work? So there was no solution for this angle. Why? Yeah, this is the problem. What do you always know about the hypotenuse? It's supposed to be the longest side, and it wasn't. Yeah. So this is a faulty triangle. It's supposed to be the longest side. Okay, you can't have a side longer than that in a triangle, or else it's just not working. Hence why mathematically there's an error on that, okay? Because it doesn't work. Okay, this triangle says solve for everything. So there's two angles I need to find, and there's a side I need to find. Okay, let's go to Z. How would I find Z? And now we have a bunch of strategies. The theorem. So should I do a squared plus b squared or the subtraction one? Would you add or subtract to get that one? Add. So 10 squared plus 17 squared, and then we square root, and we push the answer button, right? So that's one strategy we've learned. We're going to kind of combine a bunch of stuff here. 2 decimal places. Okay, so next we're going to pick either x or y. Doesn't matter at all. Let's just all pick the same thing though. X. Ooh, unanimous. Okay, so I'm going to be finding an angle. Now here's the trick. You could use so, the ka, or the toa because you have all the sides. I would use the 10 and the 17 because they were put on the paper first. So this is the what to the x? The O, and this is the A in relationship to the x. That's what's the O and that's the A. So ka or toa. I'm going to work with toa. So the tan of the x angle equals O over A. And how do you find angles? What's always your button pushing? Inversing. To find an angle, you'll always need to inverse. And then we're left with y. You could do SOHCAHTOA. You could do any of those. They all would work. But there's an even easier way to find y.
Well, if there's a 90-degree, then you just add that to 40.5.
Because you're adding them all up to what in a triangle? 180. So 180, if I minus 90 from that corner and I minus that corner, I should figure out what's left to go, right? Does that make sense? And again, yeah, you could have used SOHCAHTOA stuff to get the y, but if you can use the 180, it's probably faster, right? Some of you might even notice that if this is 90, these two have to make 90 as well together. That's another thing to think about in a right triangle. Okay, one more and then we're done. And it's a solve for everything. Okay, which letter are we going to go with first?
Well, X would be easy.
X? How should we get X?
28 plus 90.
Yeah, the 180 rule. So X, the 180 rule. So that just means all the angles have to add up to 180. Okay, there's a variety of things we can do. So I love this on my answer key because I have like 10 different options. What do you want to do though? Why are they Z? You could do anything right now. So we'll just pick a letter. Z. Okay, so if we're solving for Z, we're going to have to use an angle. Which angle do you want to deal with? Should we use the given one or the one we found? The given one. It's always better to use given information. I'm going to use those three things and figure out Z. So that is going to be what relationship? What letters do you have? O and an H. So I'm going to go with the sine ratio for 28 degrees. Which is 5 over a Z. So this is yesterday's stuff. So what do I want to do? And put that over 1 to make proportion, proportion. And then which two items should I times? 5 times 1 divided by sine 28. That leaves us with y. So I can see people doing multiple strategies here. You could do SOHCAHTOA stuff with 28, 5, and y. You could do that. You could do Pythagorean theorem, this side and this side and this side. Okay? You pick. I'll do them both. You pick which one you would want to do, because you could do Pythagorean theorem. You have side, side, missing side. Or you can use the angle and do some SOHCAHTOA stuff. Okay, so I did both methods and I got the same thing no matter what I did. So you can, there's lots of different varieties of how to get there. Can I ask you what the back page of your whole notebook looks like? Is it blank or is it still writing? It's blank? Okay, let's flip to that. Okay, give me a 3-column chart. What do I have? What do I want? What should I use? Summary of what we've done. So if you have 2 sides and you want the third side. So if you were given 2 sides and you need to get a third side, then I should use Pythagorean theorem. Okay, and then I'm also going to kind of summarize, well, Pythagorean theorem, well, the add version or the subtract version, right? Because you add to get a hypotenuse, subtract to get a not hypotenuse. Okay, what if you have a side and an angle and you want to get another side?
What we did yesterday.
Yep, you do the SOHCAHTOA proportions. So if you have a side and an angle, you're going to do SOHCAHTOA with the proportions. So what would that look like? Something like that. You have a side angle to get a side. So that's what we did yesterday. And now the third thing we've learned is if we have 2 sides and we want an angle, then we're doing SOHCAHTOA stuff and we're doing the inverse. And that's the summary. That's all you need to know about the trig. And once you've kind of mastered those, what do I do where, then I can mix up the problems and you can do them all.